with a young Mexican boy servicing him on a beach in Mexico.
Oh, I never knew that. So that's why Wendy Williams got fired.
Yes, they fired her. She got blacklisted. So this is Hollywood from the Hollywood YouTube channel. And I'm on the phone with Jesse, and he's from that Controversy radio show. Okay, and then you guys are pretty busy. I've seen, we have a mutual admiration society. But the reason I'm on here, and initially I wasn't going to do the show, I just want to tell you guys that I wasn't going to do it because I figured I had covered everything that I had to say. However, in retrospect, there was a lot more surrounding the life and death of Kim that I didn't know, and I found out later, so I'm going to tell you later on in this interview what I found out, and that was the impetus for me to actually come on the show. All right, so I was talking about Kim and the fact that, you know, she hung with Diddy through a lot of crap. They were saying she was his off-and-on girlfriend for like 13 years. I actually thought she was his off-and-on doormat because he was never faithful to her, and he had all of these other kids. Well, he had one other child, Chance, with the model Sarah Chapman, and then he had another kid during the same time he was dealing with Kim, with Lisa Hilton Brim. And so, you know, and then he had all these girlfriends in between, Jennifer Lopez and this and that. But the bottom line that I felt in terms of Kim was that she stuck in there because she was getting paid. She was collecting all this child support. And I always tell young people, if you take their money, you're going to take their crap. And so that's basically what she was doing. She was taking his crap. But as we move on to the present, the thing that disturbed me the most was the untimely manner of her death, and that got me to thinking about a lot of things. And Jesse, you can interrupt me anytime you want if you have a question, because I will just be rambling on with my thoughts if you don't.
No, you go ahead. I have a tendency of cutting people out too much, so I'm just going to let you run with it.
Okay, well, I don't mind if you cut me off, because I talk a lot. So it wasn't like she was chronically ill. Now, in my video, I got thousands of comments, and one of them, the people said, oh, well, she was dying. No, actually, she wasn't. She was pretty healthy. And then she got what they said was pneumonia, and this was all speculation because the autopsy was never completed. And this is something that happens rarely, but it does happen, where people are buried and they never know the cause of death. And so they're still waiting on these reports and findings and tests that were ran. But the bottom line is if they couldn't find anything conclusive at the autopsy, chances are they're not going to find anything conclusive.
Sorry to cut you off. Did you hear that on the death certificate they put the cause unknown?
Well, it said deferred.
Yes, deferred.
I put a copy of the death certificate up in the video. And this was where I was making this point. How do you defer a cause of death? That simply means, well, we're waiting on more findings. But again, if it wasn't found at the autopsy, I doubt you're going to find anything when the tests come back, because everything was speculation. One report said she had the flu. Another report said she had pneumonia. Another report said she had just come back from Africa. And I really resent that because they're always trying to pin something on Africa. All the diseases are not found in Africa.
Very true. Yeah.
So I really resent that, you know, especially being of African descent. I'm Ethiopian. And I resent that every time somebody comes back from Africa, I was just waiting for them to say Ebola so I could really see it. So then this was what made me really do a heads up in terms of the confusion around the cause of death. Because I believe it was Suge Knight who said that, you know, it's very easy to give someone a death sentence without them even knowing that you're giving it to them. There are chemicals we use to clean the house. And some of them have odorless, colorless substances that will kill you, and you can add it to someone's Kool-Aid or whatever the hell, and they die. And you don't find it in the system because it is evaporated. And so there are lots of ways to kill people without it being detected. So I have a lot of questions because we have a woman who's relatively young who just drops dead one day and nobody knows why. Would there be a reason for someone to kill this person? And it came to my mind that, yes, there would be. Someone actually sent me a post that was made on the USA Today website, and I showed it in the video. And it said that Kim was writing a tell-all book. And in the book, that she would be exposing Diddy and his homosexual affairs with other artists and a bunch of other stuff that was not publicly known. Now, it's no secret, especially within the industry, that Diddy has been bisexual for quite some time. In fact, this was the reason that Wendy got fired. Way back in the day, Wendy Williams was fired from Kiss because she exposed pictures of him having a homosexual affair in Mexico.
Oh, I never knew that. So that's why Wendy Williams got fired.
Yes, they fired her. She got blacklisted, and then she went to within a couple of years, she was back on the radio in Philadelphia, and then she made her way back to New York via WBLS, and then as time went by, she was able to get reestablished in New York. But she had a website way back then, in the 90s, where she had posted up this picture of Diddy with a young Mexican boy servicing him on a beach in Mexico. But the thing about it was that during that time, and even up to this day, you have a lot of these places like Mexico and Dominican Republic where there are some dirt poor people, and the kids are pimped out to tourists to get money for the family. There are a lot of American tourists that go to these places to find cheap thrills.
A lot of people don't realize this, and they're kind of naive to it, but people don't realize that a lot of times when people go on vacations to these third world countries, the reason they're going is because they have something to hide that they can't do in America or in Canada, that they need to go to these third world countries to satisfy their sexual needs.
Yes, indeed, and especially when it's involving children. But on the other hand, you have the adults in these regions who pimp the children out because they need the money. So it's almost like it's an industry. So these pictures were put on her website at the time. It's not the website she has now, obviously. And that was what began her blacklisting, because Diddy was very powerful, and he had some of the top artists of the time, and he threatened to pull all his artists off the radio station unless they fired her. So they got rid of her. And he was, tight with Clive Davis, and that he was part of that whole thing in terms of the cover-up and helping Diddy to get the power that he wields today through his association with Clive. So she was writing this book, and in the post that was sent to me, it also said that it was not reported that on the day she died, 2 laptops were stolen from her house, which supposedly contained the manuscript of the book, and the theft was never reported. They just sort of disappeared. And so that led me to believe that there might, in fact, be some merit to this claim. But then as I looked deeper, I noticed that at the funeral, she was in the Promethean casket. And I had did a video a few months ago on Aretha Franklin's passing and the funeral. And I researched the Promethean casket, which is this 24-karat gold-plated casket, that James Brown was buried in, Michael Jackson was buried in, and so I found out something that really, I had known this, and I reported this to people that didn't know, that the casket takes 2 weeks to make. So, and it involves a lot, if you go on their site, it involves a lot of polishing and certain, there's weatherproofing on the inside. There's just a whole bunch of stuff, and this is a very expensive casket.
So it's not like they have these in a warehouse just sitting there waiting for somebody to purchase. These are all custom ordered, custom made for the individuals they're burying.
Exactly. Not to mention that not too many people can afford the damn thing. So they don't have them sitting around rusting. And I remember that in Aretha's case, one of the reasons she was above ground for 2 weeks is because they were waiting for the damn thing to get made. Because in black culture, we usually put our people in the ground pretty quickly. Not as quick as the Jews, but pretty quickly in terms of you don't keep no dead body up for 2 weeks. And that's extreme in our culture. And so I'm like, they're waiting for this damn thing to get made. So my thinking in terms of Kim is, who ordered this damn thing 2 weeks before she died? Because she was in the ground within a week. So it makes me think that somebody, whoever was behind this, had it ready. And then if you go by the media reports, it was Diddy who made all the funeral arrangements. Everything was his, he paid for it and he did it. The other thing that was of interest to me was that at first they said they were going to have a public viewing, and then at the last minute he decided that there would be no public viewing. And so she had a closed casket funeral. And then I got this email this morning from Kim's hairdresser, a woman who used to do her hair. And she basically asked me, did I know that Puffy used to beat up Kim? He used to beat her a lot. And that if you look at earlier pictures of her, you will see that her face and her features changed dramatically over the years. And this was due to the beating. And I told her, I said, I did not know that. But a lot of times, in the cases of hairdressers and personal assistants and masseuses and barbers and even bartenders, they get the drop on what's going on in people's lives, even more so than friends do.
That's right.
And so by her being the hairdresser all of these years, she said that, you know, she was privy to a lot of things that were not publicly known. And I do know for a fact that there are women who will put up with beatings and all types of abuse because the man is paying the bills. And I don't co-sign on that. I think it's better if you got to move in a shelter with your kids and do the best you can until you could do better than to let a man abuse you. So there's emotional abuse and then there's physical abuse. But the one thing I sure didn't know about was physical abuse. And this same hairdresser, you will hear of her. I'm not going to tell you who she is, but she is writing a book. And she asked my opinion, should she write the book? And I said, hell yeah, write it. Because she was also Mary J's hairdresser and a few other women who were significant and are significant in the industry. And so I said, you have a story to tell. And as long as you speak the truth, there is no shame in that. People tried to tear me a new one, not many, but a couple of people regarding my video. One person told me, oh, well, if your money is long enough, you can have the casket made as soon as possible. The fact of the matter is, Aretha's money was long enough, and she still had to wait 2 weeks. So your story and your claim holds no validity.
I'm sure the people that make the casket aren't just putting a 2-week waiting list on there just for the heck of it because they have nothing better to do.
Exactly. And if you go on the site, it shows you and it tells you what's involved in terms of the polishing and the workmanship and all of this.
And then again, they have to be made to a certain size too.
Exactly. Everybody's not the same size. But the other thing, more importantly, is that it's not cheap. It's almost $1 million, this damn casket. So definitely I won't be in one, and probably not you. And you know what I'm saying? This is like, you know, and I'm always amused when people want a send-off in all this glory. I mean, Aretha went to meet her maker in her, were they Manolo Blahnik or, no, they were Louboutins. I'm quite sure if she walks through them pearly gates, it won't be on those Louboutins. and the casket is just for show. It's for those of us who's living. Because I'm sure at this point in the game, the dead don't give a damn what you bury them in. They're dead. So all this form and fashion, I just found, took issue with it because it looked like a big guilt trip to me. A lot of people also called me out on my video and said, well, how did you know Diddy and not know Kim? Diddy rarely took Kim anywhere with him. I knew Diddy from the industry. So I would see him at industry parties, and I knew him from the business at the office. One time I went to Uptown to try to get a group signed. And so, I knew him from business and from socializing. But he rarely took any of his women with him to these events. When he was hosting parties at Howard, when he did that City College party, if the women he was dealing with were there, they weren't with him. He was very much in control of how his events ran, and the women that were around him were either working for him or with him. And he would go to these things with a group of guys, usually. That's what he kept himself surrounded. Yeah. Now, I mentioned a friend of mine who I still know to this day who used to date him. I didn't say her name. She told me years ago that the reason she stopped dating him was because he would ask her to wear a strap-on during intimacy. And that's, you know what that is. Dildo. Well, for the benefit of those who might be listening who don't know what it is. And so that's suspect. If you're a man and you're having a relationship with a woman, why would you want her to wear a penis?
You know that saying? You know that saying where there's smoke, there's fire? You go and look up a bunch of interviews randomly on Diddy on YouTube, for example, and more than half of them will be other artists or people in the industry talking about parties they went to with Diddy where they saw him in rooms with other guys naked doing inappropriate stuff, and the story has the same kind of ending where he would be in a room alone with a bunch of guys and no women, and it would be all men in the room.
Yes, and so what I did say is that if Kim was writing a book, it's possible that she was exposing some of these activities, because if you were the person for 13 years, then surely you must know a lot about them. And so when this friend of mine told me that was one of his proclivities, I immediately put two and two together in that if this is something he liked, he didn't stop liking it just because he met a new woman. Chances are every woman he got with had to play along because this is what he likes. You like what you like.
You know what seems suspect to me is his whole relationship with Cassie and the whole timing of everything that happened with her, and then all of a sudden Kim ends up dying suspiciously.
Well, there are people saying that Cassie had something to do with it. Now, there was the other thing, too, that a few months before Kim died, he and Cassie supposedly broke up, and he put her out of the house, and the police were called, and all this other shit. The thing about it is the day after Kim died, they're showing these two together. And there's also rumors that Cassie is a tranny, but this is what's been said. And, the thing is that, okay, so you can like what you like and you can do what you want to do if you're an adult. But I believe in keeping it real. I think if that's what you do and that's your thing, then keep it 100. We're in a time now where you don't have to hide what you like. You can do you.
Exactly. Like this should be like a public service announcement to all the gay males in the industry that are pretending to be straight and constantly rolling around with women, just to make it look like they're actually ballers and they're constantly have a different girl on each arm every time they're seen out in public. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they're only surrounded with other men.
I think it's shameful to pretend. Back in my day, we had an expression called keeping it real, keeping it 100. And that's what I think. I think if that's your thing, then man up, for lack of a better word, and just say it and do it and be seen, you know? And he's not the only one. I mean, look at Eddie Murphy. Oh, my goodness. I could tell you stories about him. But Antoine Samouli, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name correct, was writing a tell-all book. And this was a gorgeous tranny that he had been with on more than one occasion. And they found her, fell off her balcony, so they say. But I believe that there was more to it than meets the eye. I don't think that just one day, after living in this place where she was living, and then one day you just fall off the balcony. You know you have a balcony. I mean, come on. You know, I didn't buy that 1 minute. And especially during the time that she's writing this tell-all book. So, and even, what's her name? Ron Stephan, she wrote her tell-all books, but she kept a lot of stuff out of them. She was smart. She wanted to live. So there was a lot of stuff that went on that she didn't talk about. Because she was definitely one of Diddy's paramours.
Speaking of trannies, did you also hear just, I think a day ago or two, that Dwight Howard, the famous basketball player, was exposed by a tranny that he was having a relationship with for years?
I didn't hear that, but I wouldn't be surprised, because one thing I know about trannies, I have a neighbor who's a tranny, and her and I are cool, and that bitch talks too much. They can't wait to tell, you know? And I don't want to know. I don't want to know who in the building you're sleeping with. So I wouldn't be surprised. And then not only that, and I can't say all, but a lot of them are very vindictive, like women. You get on their bad side, and they're going to out you. They're going to do whatever they can if they're not getting what they want, whatever it is.
It's usually when the first payment bounces, then they go and rat them out and expose all their dirty secrets.
Yeah. And especially if you're one of those men that are still in the closet. I don't understand. I thought the closet door had been broken down and burned and it was wide open, but apparently not. You've got a lot of these guys who are still in the closet, and so they're getting exposed. They're getting exposed because they don't want to be exposed, which is the funny thing about it. You know, they don't want to be exposed, and that's the very fuel to the fire when they don't do something that the person wants. That's exactly what they use to light the fire. The fact that you are not proud of who you are and what you do. And in a lot of cases, it's also because they have girlfriends and wives. And that's
right. Where
it pisses me off. Because that's very unfair, especially if you have children. You're cheating. Doesn't matter if it's with a cow. You're cheating. This I'm saying because I have free license to tell you, and because it was just too crucial in terms of the beatings to leave out.
Yes. So just to be clear, you're not somebody who's doing this for the attention or for the subscribers or for the views. You actually knew Puff Daddy back in the day. Like you know a lot of people in Hollywood. You're very well connected. So you're speaking from somebody who has first-hand experience being around these people as well.
Jesse, if you look at my earlier videos, I actually talk about who I am and how I come to first-hand knowledge of what I speak. And even on my Amazon page, which is amazon.com/author/Rebecca Scott, I give my resume. I worked in the hip-hop music industry for almost 30 years. and I would have worked longer, but I had to go to prison for 10 years. But the thing is that I worked way back in the day, way before Diddy even came into the game. I remember meeting him when he was still throwing his parties at Howard. I managed artists like KRS-One, Mad Lion, Channel Live. I worked at record labels. As I already said, I did Tupac's movie. I was one of the first managers to get hip-hop artists wearing designer clothing. I had, I don't remember the artist, but I got him a deal with Hugo Boss. They had a hip-hop line way back in the 90s called Boss by IG Design. Oh, it was Orange Juice Jones. He wasn't hip-hop. He was R&B. But then I got Big L also, who was hip-hop, to also wear these clothes, which were pretty nice, because Hugo Boss had some nice clothes, but when they did their hip-hop design, they didn't shirk on that. They did a good job. And then there was a black designer named Benny Miles, and I got Total and a few other people to wear his clothes. So I've been in this for a minute, and like I said, the only thing that cut me short was having to go through my bid for trafficking, because you're only as hot as your last hit record. And as a manager, if your artist is not making money, then you damn sure ain't. And so there were lean years in between, and I made a choice to do what I did in terms of the drug trafficking. And so that cost me a 10-year bid, and then I came out and I was retired. But while I was in prison, I wrote my books. I wrote Real Hip-Hop Gangsters because I knew who they were. And so I told the stories of people who were really in those streets, not like today where you got people bragging about what they do, but they're not really doing it.
Yes, they call them studio gangsters.
Yes, there you go. And then I wrote my life story, the Thug Bible. I wrote Hip Hop Illuminati because one of the reasons that I wound up in prison was because I took the bait of some people who will never see a jail because they're too big, but they use stupid people like myself. I was pretty dumb at that time, and I was also caught up in the money, and so they used me to traffic. I had itineraries where my artists were going to be, and if there were people on the other end of that itinerary that were expecting drop-offs, then it was my duty to make sure they got what they were waiting for. And in a lot of cases, I was paid, in all those cases, actually, I was paid pretty handsomely.
I've heard rumors that a lot of celebrities, and maybe you can confirm if this is true, a lot of celebrities that do a lot of international traveling, a lot of them are into trafficking. It could be drugs, it could be jewelry, it could be anything really of value, and that they get into this because they end up making a lot more money because they're traveling back and forth and not being checked through the airports more than half of the time, that they will traffic drugs on the side for extra income. Is that true?
I can tell you this. During my time of doing what I did, there wasn't Homeland Security. So you could get through the airports a lot more easily with stuff than you can today. There are celebrities and people, I call them, the ones who do this mostly are celebutards. They either have a habit, and so they do it to pay off their debts, or they're in between films or records or what have you. And like I said, I had an apartment, I lived in the La Premiere from the early 90s until I went to prison. Back then, my apartment was almost $3,000 a month. If my groups are not making money, I'm not making money. Same thing with a lot of the celebrities and people you refer to that were doing what I was doing. You get accustomed to that lifestyle, and you want to keep it. Money is very addictive. It might even be more addictive than drugs. And the things that you desire cost money. So if you're not making money in your field, and you want to keep your toys, then you have a very hard decision to make. Because these people, they monitor you. I talk about it in my book, Hip Hop Illuminati, where you have the powers that be who know what you're making. This is why Forbes is able to publish everybody's business every damn month, because they make it their business to see how you're doing.
Yeah, back in the day, the rappers used to refer to them as the hip-hop police. You don't really hear that anymore.
Hip-hop police. Yeah, there was really a hip-hop police during that time. That's who got me.
Yeah, Prodigy even mentioned that he had a run-in with them where they pulled him over and had a whole book and were asking him random questions about random artists in the industry, asking if he was connected with them, and so it does actually exist.
If you've been in that world and you've had people who you would not even expect, I had people who were very upper echelon people approach me with things that I would have never expected them to even have a clue about. So you have to be careful who you get in bed with, because everyone is not your friend. This is the only industry, or the main industry in terms of what I know, where you can have people who are putting money in your pocket and putting a knife in your back at the same time.
A lot of people don't realize, too, is that a lot of these celebrities aren't as wealthy and rich as they're making themselves out to be. So a lot of times, I've even heard stories where a lot of the female celebrities end up becoming, especially when they become Z-list celebrities, they end up becoming high-priced prostitutes and selling their bodies because their names are worth more internationally to high rollers that will pay them for sex than they would ever make in any movie role. Like, for example, Tara Reid would be a perfect example of that.
I will tell you this. In my book, Satan's Children, I discussed that very thing about how people, they are very rich Middle Easterners who will pay. Hi, I think I lost you.
Yeah, you know what's really weird? I looked at my recorder timer. The phone got cut off exactly at 40 minutes, like on the dot. Maybe we're talking about something they don't like.
Well, yes, phones are a tracking device these days, so I wouldn't be surprised.
So continue where you left off. You were mentioning the Middle Easterns who were paying a lot of money for...
Oh, yes. In a lot of cases, when they shell out millions of dollars for a particular entertainer, this is usually some fantasy of theirs, and they are hopeful that the encounter will result in maybe even sexual encounter. And this is all the more likely in the case of someone who is, for lack of a better word, a has-been, because they need the money. And they figure no one's going to know. And usually no one does know.
Yeah, because they could easily say, for example, Nicki Minaj is going to tour in Thailand, for example. And then while she's there, she could be doing who knows what there, and then they can keep it under wraps because they were on tour.
Yeah. And you hear a lot of cases of where this artist was paid so many $1 million by Chic, whatever.
Yes. And you know what's funny? Nicki Minaj actually got paid, I think it was $1 or $2 million to go hang out in a third world country with a prince who is 14 years old, and that was his wish for his birthday, to have Nicki Minaj come for his birthday to his country and to perform for him. So it makes you think, because in those countries too, when they reach 14, that's their age of puberty, or when they start to have sex and lose their virginities. So it kind of makes you think if he was paying for more than just a concert.
Yes, and in a lot of cases, it is. And the thing about it, what really makes it weird, is that a lot of times the entertainer doesn't know until they get there what is expected. So if you're thinking, you're getting paid just to perform, and then you get there and they tell you, well, we really want more than that. What do you do?
When Kim Kardashian first got married to Kanye West, there was a huge story where Kanye was mad at her because her and her mom made a side deal where they were going to go visit some king for his birthday or something like that, and to go to a Middle Eastern country for 2 days, and Kanye was really livid about it, and the media never explained why, but this would make sense. Your documentary is, I believe, if not the first, the second ever documentary that I ever watched on Tupac, and yours was number one or two of the documentaries that I saw that actually made me kind of fall in love with the kind of person Tupac was and became a big fan of him. So we've known each other for a long time without even knowing it.
Wow. Well, thank you for watching. The person who actually was the head of the documentary, whose idea it was to even do it, was George Tan. But George was famous for karate movies, and so he enlisted me because he didn't know anything about hip-hop. He just knew he wanted to do a documentary on Tupac. And so that's how I became instrumental in it, because he had the money and the backing to get it released, and I had the info.